Welcome to City Council Chronicles. Somewhere out there, a city council meeting is happening, and you're not watching it, but I am. I'm Michael Carlick, and you're listening to the City Council Chronicles podcast. For City Council meeting reviews, visit councilchronicles.com. Last week, I reviewed the Salisbury, Maryland City Council meeting. Everyone was having a terrific time talking about the Arts and Entertainment District. But then, guess who waltzed in the door? None other than the mayor's dad. I believe we have the audio of that exact moment.
I don't care where you go. I don't care that you're an elf. I don't care that you're nuts. I don't care that you're my son. Get out of my life, now!
Also, please take a moment to rate and review this podcast on iTunes. And while you're at it, hit the subscribe button. We've got some great guests coming up, so that way you won't miss an episode. Today, I talked to Scott Neal. He's the city manager of Edina, Minnesota. He's been at the city manager game for a long time, and he was a fun guy to talk to. We discussed his days as a blogger, his highly rated YouTube series, and about some difficult public commenting in Edina. Stay tuned, episode 23, the music is by bensound.com. Scott, you are the city manager of Edina, but I want to start 4,000 miles away in England. You were there for 10 days in 2005, and you met a queen's dozen of local councilors. Now, did you learn anything about city council meetings over there? Other than, obviously, their meetings are on the opposite side of the dais.
It was very interesting. I went with a friend, and we had a contract with the Office of the Deputy Prime Minister, who was very interested at that time in encouraging local government officials in the UK to start blogs.
Oh.
I had a blog that was up and running since 2003. It was kind of rare at that time for a city official. So that's how I got that gig, and it was a lot of fun. We learned that most of the cities that we dropped in on had a huge number of council members compared to cities in the U.S.
What are we talking here? A dozen? Two dozen?
2 dozen, sometimes more.
Wow.
And they were amazed that we could get work done with 5 council members, and wondered how we managed to do that. They had in their mind a link between the number of elected officials and the effectiveness of the organization. So I don't know if they have rethought that, but they were
well,
sure.
With that number of council members, I would think the meetings could get unwieldy, like if you're dealing with Congress or a state legislature.
Yeah. So that was very interesting. Most of the cities did not have their own police force because their police powers are nationalized there. So instead of having a police force, they had people that handled antisocial behavior or things like that, very similar to what some of our police do. But they all wanted to have some authority like that. We had a deer management program where we thinned the herd, so to speak, because of how many deer we had in our town.
Yeah, you were killing them. Let's call it what it is, sir. You were killing these deer.
We managed their numbers. How about that? They had deer parks, and so they were aghast when they heard that what we were doing with deer. We had municipal
deer parks, like a reservation.
They could not believe that someone would shoot a deer, kill a deer. Yeah, we had municipal liquor sales in the city I worked for, and they never heard of such a thing. So there were commonalities, but there were also some interesting differences too.
Yeah, do they have city managers over there? Well, they're probably called something different, like municipal roustabouts.
Most of them were called chief executives of some kind. And yes, they do. They have almost every city had one. And they accompany the elected leaders, not unlike the U.S. And we belong to the same professional association. So very similar, actually.
Do you think if you got hired as a chief executive over in England that you could do the job without too much difficulty?
Very much. Yep. I think it wouldn't be that big of a change, actually.
Right. Although you would have to stop personally killing deer with your bare hands.
I could get used to that.
All right, let me pivot to another place that's not Edina yet. You have testified previously in the Minnesota legislature. Now, how are their hearings different from Edina City Council meetings?
I would say they are, I find them to be much more formal.
Formal, yeah.
Their protocol and maybe more accurately their etiquette is more formal in terms of how they address each other and how they address their chair. The authority of the chair feels fairly great, I think, in that environment. And certainly you feel it as somebody who's testifying. You feel I felt just the heat of that and the pressure of that environment. I find it to be much greater than our city council chambers.
Interesting. So what you're saying is you felt more pressure sitting in front of the dais talking to the people than you do when you're up on the dais being a part of the meeting. Is that accurate? Yeah,
I do. It's a great way to empathize with the people that come and speak to our council. It's more difficult than one first thinks.
Mm-hmm. Well, you have been the city manager for 5 cities, which is very impressive. You've probably worked with hundreds of city council members in that time. I'm going to put you on the spot. If you had to put together a city council meeting with a dream team of like 5 people, who from those hundreds of council members would you draft?
Well, I've been a city manager for 28 years, and that's long enough to know that I don't answer that kind of a question straightforwardly, right? And in fact, I don't even really think about it. I have certainly worked for council members that I like more than others, but putting together a dream team, it'd be really tough to do. I currently have an exceptional city council that I enjoy working for very much.
Oh, yeah, the most talented, qualified people just happen to be the ones you work with now, huh?
Well, I'm saying people are going to listen to this podcast, right? I got to be cautious how I answer a very delicate question like that.
All right. You're being polite and taking a page out of the Minnesota legislature playbook. Gotcha.
Thank you.
But I do want to ask, are there any noticeable differences in how the council meetings proceeded in those 5 cities where you worked?
Oh, very much. The culture of a council meeting is very much related to the culture of the council itself and somewhat to the city itself. Before my current job in Edina, I worked for the city of Eden Prairie, which is it borders Edina on the southwest. It's a little bit larger than the city, both geographically and by population. And its culture was different. Its council meetings were really fairly straightforward business meetings of the elected officials of the city. And that city placed a high degree of preference, I guess, the elected officials have on staff members being competent and doing their work prior to council meetings so that the council could come in and hold people accountable, but not redo everybody's work. And that, in that culture, that produces fairly short meetings. Most of our meetings there were in the 60 to 75 minute range. In Edina, it's the culture here is for council members to be very involved in even the detailed levels of projects. They want to be involved in how things are built, how things are decided. They don't place as much authority in staff. They'd like projects and programs brought to them at a stage where they can still have input over them, not a finished product. And in that case, that produces a meeting that's much longer.
So we were talking about pressure a minute ago. Do you feel more pressure with a city council that is standoffish, expects you to have everything perfect when you deliver it to them? Or is it more pressure when the city council is more involved, which means they take some responsibility, but they might be more in your face and peppering you with questions about everything?
Actually, I think the more difficult position to be in is when the expectation is that it's perfect and brought kind of wrapped up in a bow to a council meeting for approval. And I think there's more pressure on you as a staff member in that format because accountability is 100% to staff. We're not sharing accountability or culpability. It is centered on one person or at least on one group of people.
Right.
And if it's not right, council will hold you accountable for that.
Yeah. Have you ever gotten sad when a city council member retires or leaves, maybe because they were always nice to you or because they were reliable or because the person who replaced them was terrible?
One that I can tell you most recently, I've had that a number of times over my career, but the one that comes to mind most recently is a council member in Edina named Ann Swenson. I was fond of Ann because she was part of the council that hired me. She just wrapped up her council term here and retired after 22 years of service to the city. She was replaced by a very able guy named Mike Fisher, who's going to be a great council member. So, but I do miss her. She was clear in what she wanted, which made her an easy person to work for.
Yeah, I actually have a clip of her last council meeting when she gave everyone, including you, a gift.
I'd like to talk a little bit about Scott Neal. He's wonderful, but he has this really bad habit of putting his pen up in the air when he'd like to speak. And the only one who ever sees it is me. So I have, now it's not working. There. Okay, I'm thinking that's going to help us a whole lot for meetings.
Okay, and she gave you a pen that lights up. So do you use that sparkle pen in meetings?
I don't use it in council meetings, but I do use it around my office, yeah. It's great fun.
Cool. Now, you are a bit of a celebrity in Edina because you host a YouTube series called On the Job, in which you have different city workers teach you how to do their jobs. And look, I would recommend this to everyone, even if they don't live in Edina, because you show people how to drive a Zamboni or how to fill a pothole or how to pick up golf balls on a driving range in one of those special caged golf carts. And I should mention, while you were in the cart, you were being pelted with golf balls from people.
Most of those people were my own staff, by the way.
Oh, it was your staff? Okay, I figured there was a little bit of staging going on there, all right?
It was a great opportunity for them.
But my favorite job you did was at Edinburgh Park. It's a giant indoor play place, and I want to listen to you climbing to the top of Adventure Peak and then sliding down a big old slide.
Hi, I'm Edina City Manager Scott Neal, and you're watching On the Job, a show where we reveal the city employees that keep Edina going and show you some things that can only be learned on the job. Yeah, this is getting pretty high up here. It looks like, oofda. Oh, I'm almost at the top. All right. Oh, look at this. I made it. I have conquered Adventure Peak. This is the most exhausting on-the-job assignment I've ever had. If I don't come out of this alive, Edina, it's been a real privilege to work here. Oh, I made it. All right.
I had a lot of fun, but I got to tell you, I was sore for 2 days after that because my crawling muscles just aren't exercised enough these days.
You're telling me you don't go to Chuck E. Cheese on the regular?
I am telling you that. My kids are 31, 29, and 27. So yeah, we don't do too many of those things anymore.
Well, Scott, I am glad you're here because I'm going to roll out a brand new segment that I call At the Desk. Hey there, I'm Michael Karlick with City Council Chronicles, and today I am at the desk of Edina City Manager Scott Neal. Scott, would you show me how to do your job?
Yeah, I could, Michael. So I've got to decide here later this afternoon if I'm going to call Council Member Brindle tomorrow morning at 9 or tomorrow afternoon at 2 in the afternoon. So those are the kind of heavy-hitting decisions I make on a daily basis. What do you think I ought to do?
Ooh, boy, that's a little harder decision than I'm used to. Is it okay if I stretch out first?
Yep.
All right, great. Just leg up on the desk here. And, I think I pulled something. Oh, this is harder than it looks. Oh, boy. All right. So, 9 a.m. or 2 p.m.? Well, I'm against 9 a.m. right out the gate because that's a little early for me. Usually try to wake up around noon. But at 2 p.m., I'm usually watching my stories, my soaps, so that's not good either. Oh, boy. All right, here's what I would do. I would text her at 9 a.m., just in case she's sleeping in, and then if she still doesn't respond, give her a ring around 2 because you know she's up and maybe she's avoiding you.
I love it. You're a genius. You could do this job. Thank you.
Hey, maybe I will. Put in a good word for me with your British friends, okay?
I will very much.
Cool. Now, in Edina, you've had a couple of council meetings that stretched on for pretty long because you just had a bunch of public commenters. You sent out this tweet during one council meeting back in September, quote, "Our current speaker said he started watching the public hearing on TV at home and decided to come to City Hall to share his thoughts." Wow. I don't think I've ever seen someone show up to comment who was just watching at home and decided to come on down. Is that a frequent occurrence?
No, I got to tell you, I started in this line of work prior to city councils kind of typically being having their meetings shown on local access cable. And I can remember when we were making those decisions in a couple of different cities, where city officials worried about that very thing happening. What if we're having a public hearing and somebody watches it on TV and they decide to just come down here and join in?
Oh.
And I used to think that was something unnecessary to worry about. So when it happened this year, it was the first time in my career it's ever happened, and it was kind of fun when it did, actually. So it was a guy who had good comment, and I'm glad he put on his pants and came down here.
Boy, you assume that they're not wearing pants watching at home?
It's their privilege. It's a free country.
Oh, amen to that. But suppose someone is watching at home, pantsless, and they have something to say, but they don't want to go to City Hall. Can they tweet at you? Can they Facebook message the mayor? Or do they have to be in the room?
I would say they have to be, while the meeting is going on, simultaneously to the meeting, they got to be there because we're not typically engaged in Twitter or Facebook dialogue, certainly not Facebook dialogue, actually not Twitter dialogue either.
Right.
During a council meeting. I tweet during a council meeting, but I'm not carrying on dialogue in those tweets. It's just meant to inform people where we are in the meeting.
Okay, so do you ever get out of a meeting and look down at your messages and see that people have said to you, don't approve this development or put that stop sign over there or whatever?
I have not experienced that, but that wouldn't be unusual, and I do expect to experience that sometime very soon.
Gotcha. There was one contentious public comment that happened back in October. There was a black man who was recorded on video being handled roughly by an Edina police officer. And the next council meeting, over 100 people showed up. They were holding signs, they were sitting in the aisles, and for 3 hours, people came up to the podium and they were outraged.
And I don't expect anyone, and especially a person of color, to ever, 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 ever be treated in this manner in this city.
Why did this cop grab and pull him like he was bringing home a runaway slave?
For you guys to say that was protocol, grabbing me like this is not protocol. Why are you grabbing me like this and I'm just walking down the street? That's not protocol. That's harassing me. I'm a human being. I'm a human being. This is not protocol.
Every time a game gets out down here in downtown Minneapolis, you can see 30,000 white drunk people walking down the street and nobody is grabbing them. Don't sit here as a bunch of white folks like me and give us a load of crap about how this is protocol. It's like my head is going to explode if I hear one more lie about this.
Yes. When that many concerned people show up to a meeting, do you think that means the city has failed?
I do not.
Mm-hmm.
I don't. Not necessarily. I think one of the things you have to keep in mind when you're in government is that you hear from a very tiny percentage of engaged people on any subject, whether it's an emotional subject like that subject was, or really any particular subject. So I don't think it is a sign of failure on behalf of the city or an employee.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean it's not, but I think the mere fact that 100 people showed up for that particular meeting doesn't necessarily make it so.
Well, a lot of those people who came in to express their anger were not living in Edina. They came from Minneapolis, St. Paul, other towns. Do you think the city council should have less regard for what they're saying than the opinions of Edina residents?
I think that the council I think that the way city councils are charged in a state like Minnesota is they ought to pay attention mostly to the feelings of their citizens, to the advice, counsel, suggestions, concerns of the people that live within their jurisdictions. That doesn't mean they should ignore folks from other jurisdictions. It just means that their primary concern should be the people that live in their towns.
Do moments like that cause you to do your job any differently?
Sometimes it does, actually. That's right. I take that kind of comment very seriously. That I need to get out and get more exposure, and to the best extent, to try to get that exposure in a way that's not clarified or clarified for my viewing. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, you don't want it to be stage managed for you. When that many people show up to tell you and the city council, look, we don't feel comfortable walking around after dark, or we are constantly afraid of the police. Did that make you realize that maybe you don't know your city as well as you thought you did?
I have had in my career a couple of council meetings, I'd say, that reached that level of anger and hostility. But they haven't come around very often, and I've been fortunate, I guess, in that regard. But it certainly makes you sit up and take notice.